Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I would like to welcome you to a very special podcast discussion on ukulele. I'm your host, Richard Bailey Jr., and tonight I am joined by Mr. Jakejames Lugo. How's it going, Mr. Lugo?
I'm doing good, Rich. I've been playing a lot of ukulele.
Oh yeah, definitely. So for those of you who by the time you see this video, Mr. Lugo's review will be on the website. We're actually recording this video a couple of days earlier because basically Mr. Lugo wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about the review, about the game, just to give you all a better idea of what ukulele is all about. So first and foremost, for those that don't necessarily understand what this game is, why it's had such a big response, please feel free to let us all know what ukulele actually is.
So ukulele is one of the first games to get funded on Kickstarter. It was one of those games, kind of like Shovel Knight, kind of like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, the Ega's game, that's some of its Castlevania, that got funded off of Kickstarter. And it was one of those big games that was like a reason to show everybody that this could be a viable option when trying to get a game made. And ukulele, what makes this special is because there's a lot of former Rare employees that are working on this. I'm talking about classic Rare during the era of when Banjo-Kazooie was around on the N64 and also Donkey Kong Country 60 or Donkey Kong 64, games like that. But specifically for this one, it's the team that worked on Banjo-Kazooie, or at least some of the members that were over there, including the same composer, as well as some of the other developers and the creative minds behind it. So a lot of people, because of this, have called ukulele the spiritual successor or the real successor to the Banjo-Kazooie franchise.
Hey, that makes perfect sense. I just would add in that this game has had quite a bit of a positive reaction. I know when I went to GDC earlier this month, I tried to get an appointment to play this game, and the booth was absolutely crazy.
I remember how it was crowded over not only at PSX, but also even previously at E3 last year. I've had the chance, luckily for me, I've had a chance to play the game, I want to say about 2 or 3 times prior to now.
Okay, see? So yeah, you definitely had a lot more hands-on time with it. So where would you say you are at right now by the time of this recording? Because I'm pretty sure you will be finished with the game once the review goes live, but how far would you say you are into the game right now?
So far, I'm pretty deep into the game. I'm pretty far. Now, the way that ukulele is organized is that each world or each area of the game that you could go explore, it's very similar to Banjo-Kazooie. Almost everything about this game is almost not a carbon copy, but almost like a seamless transition or an evolution of the Banjo-Kazooie formula. And I'm talking Banjo 1 and Banjo 2. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Not Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. That's a totally different style type of game that was, again, much later in the series' lifespan. This game is almost nothing like that. This is a much more tried and true traditional 3D platformer / collectible-a-thon, any way that you want to categorize it within that same spirit and vein of the original Banjo-Kazooie. Now, where the way that they actually organize the levels in this game is that you have your main central area, which is like a giant corporation where it fits into the story, which I'm not going to get into too much spoilers here and there, for a lot of people out there. I'll talk loosely about a few things, and I'll get more into detail about it when the review is up. By the time you guys see this, you can see the review on the site. Basically, the levels, they work out like these books. The main story is that this evil corporation is trying to steal these pages or steal this book that's like, gives them absolute power that allows them to shape the universe and shape reality. And the pages that are part of this book are sentient, and they flee and they get scattered all over the place. So Yooka and Laylee, where it's Yooka being the chameleon and Laylee being the bat, kind of get caught up on all this stuff that's going on. It's a very tongue-in-cheek, silly story. And basically, you go from world to worlds within this big, giant conglomerate, corporation's building, and the worlds are organized kind of like these books, these giant books that you find just lying around. Again, it's video game logic. You have to kind of bear with it. It's very silly. It's very tongue-in-cheek. It's all over the place. But that's pretty much how you enter the worlds. Very similar to the paintings of Super Mario 64, and very similar to Banjo-Kazooie, where you go to like these different areas, and based on the jiggies that you collect in Banjo-Kazooie, you can use the pages, which is what they're called. It's funny enough, the names for a lot of these items and stuff are almost in the same spirit, almost exactly like how they're handled in Banjo-Kazooie. The pages of the book are called pages, and you collect them much in the same way that you do with the jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie. And it's just in the same way where you see like these giant objects that are themed, like levels, different types of themes to the levels, where you'll have one tropical area, one frozen area, one Halloween horror themed area. It's built very much like that.
I got you. I mean, it sounds interesting. One question I did want to ask, like I said, I know you probably can't really answer this question yet because you haven't completed the game yet, but I did want to ask you, based on how you've played it so far, do you feel as though this game in this particular world has enough in it where you can see them maybe having a sequel in the future, or, having more stories they explore within the same universe?
Context of the narrative and the plot aside, again, because at the time that we're recording this, like Rich said, I haven't completed it yet because these are very long games. It's just the style of the genre. They're very long. There's a lot of stuff to collect. There's a lot of time invested into it. But the way that this style of game works out now in the modern day, because remember, that style of game hasn't really been around prevalent for many, many years. I mean, we've had other games that are kind of similar here and there. I mean, the Ratchet and Clank reboot was kind of like an offshoot of this style of the genre, but it wasn't really the same idea. You didn't really get that same type of style that Banjo-Kazooie, Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64 had more in the modern era of consoles with the Xbox One or the Xbox 360 even, I'll even argue. Which also, I should also mention, I'm playing this on the Xbox One, and I know it's available on PlayStation 4, and it's also available on PC as well, so just keep that in mind. So the version I'm playing right now is on the Xbox One. I could definitely see this style of game working. What's interesting though is that it still has like similar characteristics of the genre from back then, where if it follows if it's not broke, don't fix it, but have it evolve and have it kind of improved upon, and it still feels very similar to those style of games. Now, with that being said, there are a few things that are kind of like an issue here and there. There was a few times in some of the worlds that I was exploring that I felt like I was going places where I wasn't supposed to go, but I was achieving like the areas where, you could reach them because of like certain mechanics where I feel like I was breaking the game a little bit, using some of the jumps and things like that. But a lot of that stuff might get changed up, especially with updates. And also that could also be, allowing the player, developers allowing the player to have a little bit more freedom, where they can explore. Like if you see like an edge on the map, even though that's where the map ends, you can still go on like this high cliff that's right on the edge and be able to kind of move around and get a good view of the entire area, which, by the way, I should say, the levels and the stages are pretty big, but they're not overbearingly big. One of the biggest things that people said about Banjo-Tooie back on the N64 is that the levels were way too big. And I totally understand it. Like looking back, on my time playing Banjo-Tooie back in the day, I can understand like those levels were way, way too big. And comparing it to now, I feel like the levels are big, but you still have a lot of stuff to do in them. And there's still a lot of stuff where, it grabs your attention and you ever feel like you're walking around for a very long time. They're very detailed and very meaty levels, but they're not like open space where there's nothing going on.
I got you. So, just like you said, definitely a lot to explore, a lot to get through. Sounds also like a very lengthy game. One question I did want to ask, this may be a little bit off topic, there's a lot of games that are out right now. I mean, we already know this is a Game-Mageddon for most of us. Not to mention that next week we have Persona coming, as well as this game. Now, do you think that this game, the timing of it coming out, is necessarily, it may be to its detriment, or do you think there's still going to be a lot of people that will want to pick this up and make time to play it?
I think that the people that are already invested into this, that pledged to the Kickstarter or have been following it for a long time, they're already set on picking up this game. The thing is, especially now with the first quarter of 2017, nobody could have predicted that we were going to get so many good games or so many good meaty games that required a huge investment of time into each one of their experiences. Nobody thought like something like this was going to happen. So there was no way for them to predict or even to really adjust the time frame of when this game is going to come out. I feel like this is what's going to be like a running theme for the rest of 2017, or at least for a good chunk of 2017, because eventually momentum has to slow down. But for now, from February or even January onward, we've just had great game after great game, or big experience after big experience. And Yooka-Laylee is no exception. Again, it's just a product of the genre, or just a characteristic of the genre. You know, the 3D platformer, the 3D platforming collectathon. That's just how those games are. Super Mario 64 was like that. Donkey Kong 64 was like that. All the Banjo-Kazooie games, even the one that a lot of people didn't like, Nuts and Bolts, are still kind of like that, where you're going around different levels and you're collecting things. And it takes some time to really find everything, whether it's the jiggies, and in this case, the pages, where you have to find a significant number of pages to move on to another area, or do like what makes this game a little bit different than its predecessors is evolve the levels, which, again, I'll get into now. Basically, each of the stages, you know, they're big enough as they are, but you can make them even bigger and unlock newer areas by collecting a certain number of pages and then just kind of expanding the worlds. So, perfect example, the first world is like this tropical section, right? Tropical area, tropical themes level. And you could go there, you could collect a bunch of pages, you could collect like 5, maybe 8, maybe even 10. I think per stage there's about 25 in every single stage. I want to say, I could be wrong on that, because there's a certain number of stages that, you know, vary, as well as also in the main hub area, much like other games like Banjo and like Super Mario 64, you can collect pages in the main hub area, which just adds on to the stuff that you could find and the stuff you could do. But after you collect a certain number of them, you could come out of the level, go to the right, you know, of the starting section of it, and actually expand the level. So that way, when you go back in there, all of a sudden there's this whole other section you haven't explored that just opens up to you. There's other characters you could find, which, by the way, I think now I could finally say it. So for everybody that checks out the game by the time this is up, makes an appearance in the game. And Shovel Knight appears in the first stage. I think I showed you a picture of it at one point, Rich, where I was like, "Well, look at this!" Like,
that was awesome. That was awesome.
Which was pretty dope. And it, funny enough, translate very well to 3D, which I thought was even funnier. But it's interesting because that's something that wasn't expected. And that comes only after your second time going back to that stage after you've expanded it. And then, let alone, you have a whole entire like scenario where you get a pagey from him for doing a certain quest, which fits in line right with his character. But there's other instances in the other levels where you run into different characters, or you run into different scenarios that weren't accessible beforehand when you first got to that section.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I had no idea you couldn't do that type of stuff in the game. So, I mean, it's definitely sounds like the developers, you know, they spent a lot of time on it. I definitely am intending to pick it up because, you know, I know of all the other games that are coming out in April. This one is definitely interesting to me. So this is good to hear.
So one thing I want to mention, though, Rich, that I think is very important, especially for people that have been following this game for a while or like this style of game, and also in the context of everything else coming out around this time frame. This is the one game I've seen so far this year that is unapologetically funny with its charisma. Or it's just unapologetic in its character and its personality, and the way that it, you know, the wit behind it, the writing is like so on point to a point where it's like there were certain things that were said by certain characters, which I don't want to spoil, but there's almost like a fourth wall breaking and a commentary on gaming itself and the games industry and other aspects about video games, which I think is hilarious. There's one instance where I think I can't say, not spoiling anything, where you meet this character called Rexo. I believe I'm pronouncing it right, but it's basically an 8-bit old school sprited character from like old school retro video games. And his thing is that every time you find him, you could play like a mini game that you can unlock by finding these little coins that are like arcade coins. So there's a lot of like, you know, inside jokes about gaming there. And one of the things that he does when you talk to him and the conversation he has with YookaLaylee is that he makes a comment about reviews and about games and about, you know, the industry, about reviewers and such. That's just funny. I mean, it's totally unapologetic in how mean it is, but it's hilarious in the context of everything. And I thought like there was a lot of instances that were like that. That's just, again, that same wit that you get from that development team that made Banjo-Kazooie, that also had a hand in the Conker's Bad Fur Day games, which it's like, it feels like a good blending, you know, writing-wise and dialogue-wise between Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur Day without going into, like, really raunchy territory.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm very interested to hear about that review joke. So I definitely, I I
And it's
definitely
fairly
enjoyed that.
early on too, which is hilarious. Just the way they go about it, I thought was just so funny.
Yeah, see, yeah, it sounds great. So definitely, absolutely, a game. Everything that you've described, it sounds as though this is a game that it's definitely something special. I'm glad that I know we initially heard about the game that it was going to get pushed to this year. And I know a lot of people thought this game would come a lot sooner, but it sounds like all the hard work is paid off. The extra time they needed to make it great. So definitely looking forward to it.
Definitely, I could say the time and effort that they put into it really shows. There's a lot of passion behind it, I feel like, just exploring the different worlds, the characters, the enemies, everything has that same type of charm and that same type of wit and design that you found in those older style games. Again, this is the same development team that did Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. And the way that some things were unexpected, this way that some things were just, whimsical and just fun. Even though a lot of it has like a childlike or a kid-like demeanor to it, it still isn't to the point where it's like patronizing to the audience. Like, I'm pretty sure people that grew up playing those style of games that are now older, that are probably adults, with jobs or just living life in the way that they can, trying to survive, are still going to feel like a sense of fun and appreciation for the way that they approach this. This is definitely also going to be for people that did not like Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts. That one of the biggest things that a lot of people were upset about with that game specifically is that it didn't feel like the old Banjo game, and that the development cycle of that particular Banjo-Kazooie game was originally going to be Banjo-Kazooie 3, and just a lot of stuff changed up when they started implementing the car stuff and all these other things that just did not feel Banjo-like. This is where I feel like they're going to really appreciate what YookaLaylee does overall.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, yeah, great for Playtonic. Also, Team 17, I did get a chance to meet them at GDC. They were all cool. Vincent, really cool guy. Everyone on his staff was very polite.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. When I was with them, both at PSX and also at E3, I believe, and PAX, I got to see different levels that I'm playing right now. Very early on in the game, I got to see the tropical level, and I got to see the ice level that was at the time that they were putting on display for everybody. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the Kickstarter backers were able to demo that. I know they had the toy box demo, and then they had that. But seeing it in, completion, at least in a completed state, alongside everything else, it was interesting. Very, very interesting, some of the stuff, how it all progressed from the time that I saw it back then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I did see some of that ice level. I saw a couple of screenshots, but at the actual GDC, they did have some stuff there that you could see as well, just like a little quick video after you played the demo. So that's cool. I'm glad to hear that the game is great thus far, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be looking forward to checking it out. But now I wanted to dive into another topic related to this game, because there was a lot of news that came out about this game in the last few weeks. Please feel free to enlighten us. What was the situation that came out regarding this?
So before I get into how I feel about it, the big thing for anybody that didn't hear about this, and I'm pretty sure everybody that's interested in this game has already heard about it, but for the few that are coming into this blind, basically Jontron, very popular YouTuber, a couple million subscribers on YouTube and such, was going to be contributing his voice to the game. He was going to voice a character, because everybody knows, if you've watched his content, he's done videos about Banjo-Kazooie. He loves that series, and it shows in a lot of his videos. So Playtonic, being those dudes and those dudettes that were there, that were part of the original team that made the original Banjo-Kazooie games, it was only natural to maybe approach him and try to see, what can be done. And I think that's a cool thing to happen. Now, since then, because that happened months ago, since then, obviously, some stuff happened with Jontron that wasn't really, that great. It had a lot of bad publicity, a lot of stuff that was politically motivated, a whole bunch of other things that were just had nothing to do with games, straight up. And in a business move and a business aspect of it, in perspective, Playtonic decided to remove his dialogue from the game. Now, I could understand this. This has to do with them wanting to distance themselves with anything that was going on not related to their game, because the stuff that was going on with Jontron had a lot of stuff to do with statements made about race, statements made about related to stuff about bigotry, and a whole bunch of other things that were going on that I'm not going to get into now. But I want to focus on the move that Playtonic did, and also the reaction that it got. basically, I felt that what Playtonic did with removing his dialogue and his contribution to the game, totally within their right. Totally, I feel it has nothing to do with them having an agenda or them having a emotion or a perspective about what Jontron was saying. I feel like it was more had to do with them not wanting to be having their game associated with anything that was involved with that. Because I feel like had they not done so, and had they not took any sort of action to remove that content that he contributed from the game, and people would have found out that Jontron voiced this game, the whole entire conversation afterwards would have been that, oh, Playtonic and this game are kind of in a way supporting what was said about him. And I feel like Playtonic didn't want to be involved with that type of conversation, which is understandable. You might feel differently one way or another about the political views or whatever else, but that's something I feel like was done to avoid that being associated with the game, because in essence, none of that has anything to do with YookaLaylee, which is what's going to lead to my next thing. The reaction and the way that people acted afterwards in relation to what Playtonic did. A lot of people, because of this, for one reason or another, were coming out and saying that they were supporting this game because Jontron was going to be in it and stuff. And I find a lot of that very suspect. I don't necessarily believe it, because YookaLaylee had a lot of support before any of this, before anything involving Jontron was in the game and stuff. And I think at one point they even announced that he was going to be in the game. I don't think everybody really knew, because I don't remember them saying that until all this stuff started happening. But a lot of people were saying that they were supporting the game because of that. But at the same time, they're also taking away their support. They're canceling their pledges. They're going to demand refunds for the game, because I'm pretty sure at some point some people have paid in full. I don't know how Steam works or whatnot, the way that the whole thing goes down, but a lot of people were saying that all of a sudden now they're not going to support the game because of this. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's very unfair, not only to Playtonic, but also not really a testament to the quality of the game. And for the longest time, while all of this news was unfolding stuff, I couldn't say anything because I was under embargo. And a lot of the people that are playing this game, even now at the time that we're recording this, we're still under embargo. So, and again, that won't be it won't be relevant by the time you guys hear this, so I could talk openly about it now. I feel like that is so unfair to Playtonic and so unfair to the game itself, because all that stuff had nothing to do with this. Had nothing to do with what's inside the game of YookaLaylee. Like, the quality of that game has nothing to do with the statements that Jontron made. Has nothing to do with any of the political discussion that was going on around it and stuff. I feel like this is going to be one of those instances where a lot of people are going to be very outraged or be very vocal about that situation, and the game itself is going to suffer a little bit, and that's not fair. I feel that's a shame, because from what I've played thus far, and I'm pretty sure it's going to show by the time my review is up when you guys are listening to this, YookaLaylee is a very good game so far from what I've experienced. I felt like it's made with a lot of love for that style of game, for that genre, from the people behind it that have, had a very good pedigree or very good portfolio of work. The Banjo-Kazooie games, Donkey Kong 64, again, like I keep mentioning them. There's a lot of love going into this game, and a lot of love and stuff that people have been expecting for a very long time, that have really been very vocal that they wanted this style of game. And I feel like, I don't know if it's necessarily those same people, but a good chunk of people are immediately just kind of crapping all over that. And I don't think that's cool, because this has, like I said, has nothing to do with what's in the game itself and what they've shown us with this game. Because in all the preview events that I've seen YookaLaylee at, it demoed very well. Had a great response from a lot of people that I saw that were there, from just random people that were playing it. And the Team 17 and Playtonic seem very confident with this game in every instance that they've shown it. And to have this type of thing come over and like completely just undermine everything else, or undermine everything that which this game has had, in its journey through its development and stuff, that's not cool. At least in my personal opinion.
Well, no, I agree 100% with that same mindset. It's very unfortunate to hear this type of stuff. I feel like a lot of people, they really should just take a step back to look at the game. And I mean, if they enjoyed what the game had to offer before, based off of preview videos, so on and so forth, different types of coverage, then they should remember that in make that their decision to support the game and play it. Don't worry about especially the fact that they've already taken Jontron out of the.
Well, at the time that we're recording this, there's going to be a patch for the game that's going to remove his dialogue. Playtonic was very open about that, and that's what everybody got upset about and such. But the patch at the time I'm playing it now, Jontron's dialogue or his contribution is still in my game. The patch hasn't been released yet. It's going to be released right before the game comes out online all over the place. And I'm pretty sure the backers, when they get their physical copy of it, they're going to be able to either update it or not. You know, if you play the game offline, I don't know how that's going to work because I didn't pledge to it. But I know like there's certain additions for people when they gave a certain amount, they got different like hard versions of the game. So that's how that's going to work, hopefully. But right now, I'm playing the game pre-patch. So there's other things that will probably change along the way by the time the game comes out next week. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you know, the fact that they are in the process of removing that, I would have thought that would have made it a non-issue, and people would have been like, okay, well, they were going to support the game anyway. So now that I'm hearing that people are still making that their decision based off of what this guy said is very disturbing.
You know what it is though, Rich? I think a lot of it, I don't think much of it has to do with the game itself. It has to do with a lot of people putting too much investment into one particular individual, one particular entity, in this case being Jontron. And I feel like a lot of that, people being vocal about that they're canceling or trying to boycott the Yooka-Laylee, which is ridiculous. I don't know why you would do that over something like this when the team really didn't do anything wrong. But to me, I feel like that isn't a lot of people, even though they're the loudest group of people that are like that. And the reason why that's still a problem is because they're the loudest people. Those are the people that are going out on forums like crazy, putting out, you know, whatever opinion that they're going to put out. You know, word of mouth could be a very powerful thing on both ways, whether it's very helpful for a game or very detrimental to a game. And I feel like the game itself, Yooka-Laylee, is in danger of like just getting that bad vibe from a bunch of people that really don't care about the game itself, that just want to focus on one thing that had nothing to do with it. They just want to focus on someone that they just look up to as far as a YouTuber and stuff, and just shit all over Playtonic like that. I don't think that's very fair.
Well, it's not, and you know, I mean, I don't want to go into any other deeper topics, but I will say, you know, I have noticed that a lot of people are willing, you know, they feel like they need to complain and get angry about a lot of ridiculous stuff these days.
Or displace themselves. I mean, we talked about it a little bit on one of our co-op podcasts where we were talking about Mass Effect when I was very vocal about that. I feel like that's like almost like a fad right now with some instances. But with this one, what makes this more special is because there isn't anything wrong with the game. From my experience, and again, a lot of people will see that when they play it right now. Even though I'm playing it pre-patched, the people will see eventually what the game is like when it comes out. But I haven't found anything really bad or detrimental to my experience playing Yooka-Laylee. So it shouldn't be getting a lot of this bad vibes or just bad reception from a lot of people, especially when they haven't even played it yet, which I think is even more detrimental. That Yooka-Laylee on release is going to have this stuff where that's going to be the conversation about it, and yet people haven't even really played the game yet. Or at least the people that are playing the game can't talk about it just yet at the time we're recording this.
And you know, that right there is something that I really do wish that people would improve upon. You know, just like you said, we mentioned on the last co-op, you know, I specifically remember saying that, you know, people should, you know, play a game to experience it for themselves and see what they think about the game. Now, we already said that there's nothing wrong with this game. And that's the whole point. There's nothing wrong with it. So any other issues outside of the game, people need to not worry about. You know, the game itself is what they should be concerned about. And as for, you did mention Mass Effect. Yeah, I know. I could say now, because I have been playing Mass Effect, that the game is, you know, maybe it's not, you know, as great or as polished as the second or third game, but the game is still great. You know, I feel as though a lot of people saw the negative feedback from the animations, and then they just completely just said that they're not going to buy the game, so on and so forth. And that's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, you know, people really should try these games out for themselves to really form an opinion and to really get an overall understanding of the experience. Not worry about the controversy outside of the game, because, you know, you have to be willing to separate these two things.
And that's what should be the focal point of discussion about it. And you can relate this to Mass Effect, you can relate this to anything else. And I feel like with Mass Effect, there is a conversation that could be had with the way that that presentation of that game and how certain other aspects about it just are for better or worse. And with Yooka-Laylee's its case, granted, people that are playing the game right now can't talk about it at this time, but they'll be able to do so when it comes out. It should really, the conversation should always be like, okay, what is the content of this game, or what's in there? Is the experience that it gives, is it any good? That should be really the biggest point of discussion. It shouldn't be about the political views of one entity over another. It shouldn't be what the decisions that the team decides to make based off of other stuff. It should be, is this game, is what you're playing right now or playing at that instance any good whatsoever? But that is what it is. Now, we're not trying to say, and I'm not trying to say that Yooka-Laylee is perfect. Let's make that very clear. It's not a perfect game. And like I mentioned before, there are some things that you'll probably see in the review when I talk about it and when you read it that, are hit or miss. It's just the nature of the genre and certain aspects of it, which again, they're not going to get into too much, so you guys can read the review when it's up. But it's still a great game thus far in a time when there's a lot of great games coming out. So I feel like at least what I could definitively say is that even though I haven't completed the game at this point in time, Yooka-Laylee is still definitely worth the wait. I feel like, after all this time with the Kickstarter and everything else, how it progressed, I feel like there's going to be a very nice payoff for a lot of people.
Yeah, see, that essentially is what matters most. Was it worth the wait? I mean, I definitely feel as though it was. I do know that there is still some excitement for the game because at GDC, people was all over that game. So I'm hoping that the positive responses of the game, that'll be enough to get people to, those who are already invested into it will still be there. But for those that may have been turned off by other stuff, I hope that they will reconsider and actually give the game a chance.
I hope they come around, and I hope that they stop getting caught up on other stuff outside of it, or stop getting caught up on the Jontron controversy. I feel like it was a moot point at the point where Playtonic decided to remove him. It would have been nice for him to be in there, but maybe he shouldn't have gone out and said some crazy stuff. That's not the game developer's fault. That's not the game's fault itself. That's other things that are outside it.
Exactly. That's what people need to remember. They need to remember that. But like I said, definitely am looking forward to the game. Pretty sure there's a lot of people that are at least interested. For those that may not have been interested, they might be interested after hearing more of these details about the game, the positive stuff. So yeah, and again, Team 17 is a great studio. They have quite a bit of great games that I saw. The Escapist 2, Avon Colony, which I thought was very, very interesting. And then of course they have Yooka-Laylee. They had it's a whole bunch of games they're working on, so I definitely wanted to do well for them as also because they deserve it. But definitely looking forward to the game, as I said. Do you have any other final thoughts you would like to say before we wrap up our discussion?
I just, so far I'm enjoying Yooka-Laylee a lot. I mean, I'm collecting a lot of the different stuff that you have to find throughout each of the levels. It's very clever in the way that they handle it, but a lot of it is very, very much in the spirit and in the vein of Banjo-Kazooie, where it's like certain stuff that are called differently or just looks somewhat mildly differently. It feels like it was ripped straight out of that game. And this, in another time, this would have been Banjo-Kazooie 3. Straight up. That I really believe that, because it's done with that same level of polished attention to detail. This feels like a natural evolution of that style of game, and that it's a shame that this came out at this time frame, because I felt like if we would have had this style of game back then, it would have been phenomenal. It would have been looked at as probably one of the better classics back then. But looking at it now in the modern day, I still feel like it's a great game. It's not for everybody. I'll definitely say that. You have to really like collecting things overall, but it's still, for what's here, I feel like this was well worth the journey.
Awesome. Hey, so definitely look out for Yooka-Laylee. It'll be out on April 4th for, I believe, PlayStation 4, PC, Xbox One.
Yep.
And from what I understand, it is coming to Switch later this year as well.
Yes, they canceled the Wii U version, I believe it was, and they said that they're going to move on to the Nintendo Switch, which makes sense. I think at this point it makes a lot of sense because Wii U is pretty much done, and Nintendo Switch is the new console for Nintendo, and that it makes sense to have the game on that platform.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So, yeah, we'll see. I definitely am going to check it out because I like playing games where I collect a lot of stuff. I just have no idea when I'll actually play it because there's way too many games right now.
Way too many good games. Just way too many long, big, and just meaty games that are of good quality, which is a great problem to have.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, excellent content across the board. So yeah, so I believe that concludes our discussion on Yooka-Laylee. Please feel free to let us know your thoughts on this review discussion in the comment section below. And also feel free to leave your comments on the review in case you have other questions that you may want Mr. Lugo to go further into depth with.
Yeah, leave us all the feedback you can. I like it when everybody leaves comments on the reviews. I've had that a couple times in some of my more recent reviews. That's been the case. And I've been in the comments. I've been talking to you guys. But if you have any questions, concerns, you're just mad at whatever score I decide to give it, let us know. Let us know not just in here, but let us know on the actual comment section of my review. So hopefully you guys get a good read out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But yes, that's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I was your host, Richard Billy Jr., and I was joined by Mr. Jakejames Lugo.
Peace out, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the review.
Yes. Take care. We'll talk to you all later.